Hello, this is Brian Hauer, and welcome to this presentation on standards mapping for cybersecurity curriculum. Now, this session will prepare you for the hands-on standards mapping activity in Module C by exploring how to effectively select, unpack, and map cybersecurity standards to create aligned curriculum. Standards mapping is a critical foundation of the background design process we're using throughout Module C. This presentation builds directly on our synchronous session about backward design. Today, we're focused specifically on the first phase of backward design, identifying desired results through standards. The strategies we'll explore will directly support your work in the upcoming asynchronous activity where you'll select, unpack, and map cybersecurity standards to create aligned lesson components. Now, cybersecurity education presents unique standards, challenges when it comes to using them. First, standards come from multiple sources: academic organizations, industry groups, government agencies, and certification bodies, each with different perspectives and priorities. Second, the field is evolving rapidly, requiring frequent standard updates. Third, standards often use highly technical language that must be translated for educational purposes. Fourth, standards typically address both technical skills and conceptual understanding. And then finally, many cybersecurity standards were developed for industry rather than education, requiring thoughtful adaptation for the classroom. Let's situate standards mapping within our backward design framework. Standards mapping is a foundation of the phase of identifying desired results. Before we can determine assessment, evidence, or plan, learning experiences, we need to clarify what students should know and be able to do. Standards provide this clarity by establishing learning expectations. Effective standards mapping ensures that curriculum is purposefully designed to address specific, meaningful outcomes rather than being driven by available activities or resources. The cybersecurity standards landscape includes several categories. Academic standards like the CSTA, computer science standards include cybersecurity components designed specifically for educational contexts. We have workforce frameworks like the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework that define knowledge and skills needed for cybersecurity careers. Then you have industry standards that include certification objectives like CompTIA, Security Plus, and broader frameworks like NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Each standard type serves different purposes and uses different languages. Effective cybersecurity education often draws from multiple standards to create comprehensive learning components. Now, selecting appropriate standards requires careful consideration of several criteria. First, students must be developmentally appropriate for your students' grade level and cognitive abilities. Second, they must be technically feasible to implement with your available resources and the time constraints that you might have in your classroom. And third, they should connect to the broader curriculum, goals, and other subject areas. Also, they should prepare students for future educational and career pathways. Selected standards should balance the technical skills, conceptual understanding, and cybersecurity practices. The goal is not to cover everything, and every standard, but to select those that provide the most meaningful learning for your specific context. Now, students unpacking is the process of breaking down the standards into smaller, into their components and smaller to guide the instruction. Now, raw standards are often broad statements that encompass multiple knowledge elements, skills, and concepts. Unpacking reveals these components, and helps you understand them. For example, this network security standard requires specific knowledge about network components and vulnerabilities, skills in diagramming and analysis, conceptual understanding of security principles, and certain prerequisites. Unpacking helps That instruction addresses all the aspects of the standard rather than focusing on just the most visible elements. Now, when unpacking standards, identify different types of knowledge components. Factual knowledge includes terminology, specific details, and elements, like names of encryption, algorithms, or types of network attacks. Conceptual knowledge includes classifications, principles, and theories, like understanding the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption. Procedural knowledge includes methods, techniques, and criteria, like steps for implementing encryption or conducting a vulnerability assessment. Metacognitive knowledge includes strategic awareness and self-knowledge, like knowing when to apply different security approaches. Identifying these knowledge components ensures comprehensive coverage in your curriculum. Skill components represent what students should be able to do with their knowledge. In cybersecurity, these typically include technical skills like configuring firewalls or using security tools, analytical skills like evaluating threats or interpreting data, communication skills like documenting findings or explaining security concepts, and defensive skills like implementing protections or responding to incidents. For example, a security auditing standard might require technical skills in using scanners, analytical skills in interpreting results, communicating skills in reporting findings, and defensive skills in recommending mitigations. Identifying these skill concepts helps ensure your curriculum builds on practical abilities, not just knowledge. Conceptual understanding are the big ideas or enduring understanding that students should take away from their learning. These transcend specific facts or skills and represents transferable insights. In cybersecurity, important conceptual understandings include the balance between security and usability, the principle of defense in depth, the ongoing nature of security, the importance of human factors, and the diversity of threat actors. When unpacking standards, look beyond the explicit technical requirements to identify these deeper concepts. For example, a standard about authentication can lead to understanding the fundamental tension between security strength and user convenience. Cybersecurity is inherently interdisciplinary, and unpacking standards should identify these connections. Mathematic connections include cryptography, logic, and statistical analysis. Social studies connections include privacy rights, policy development, and international cybersecurity relations. Language arts connections include technical documentation and clear communication of complex concepts. Science connections include applying the scientific method to security testing. Ethics connections include responsible disclosure and privacy considerations. Identifying these connections helps integrate cybersecurity across the curriculum and demonstrate its relevance beyond the technical context. Now, identifying prerequisites is a critical part of the standards unpacking. Prerequisites are what students must already know or be able to do before they can successfully engage with the standard. Common prerequisites in cybersecurity education include basic computer operation, fundamental network concepts, simple programming knowledge and language, logical reasoning skills, and digital citizenship understanding. When unpacking standards, explicitly note these prerequisites so you can address them through pre-assessments, just-in-time instruction, scaffolded resources, or differentiated starting points. This prevents the frustration and disengagement that occur when students lack necessary foundation knowledge. Now, once standards are unpacked, the next step is developing enduring understanding, the big ideas that have lasting value beyond the classroom. Effective enduring understanding express important ideas with lasting value, represent core disciplinary concepts, and require instruction to be fully understood, engage student interests. To develop enduring understanding from standards, look for the underlying principles and broader implications. For example, a standard about implementation across controls can lead to an enduring understanding about balance security and functionality through the principle of least privilege. The understandings become anchors for your curriculum design. Essential questions drive inquiry throughout the unit or course. Effective essential questions are open-ended without single correct answers, intellectually engaging, and require higher order thinking, and lead to additional questions and address core disciplinary ideas. In cybersecurity, powerful essential questions might address the balance between security and usability, the nature of system vulnerabilities, the mindset differences between defenders and attackers, or the ethical responsibilities associated with security knowledge. These questions help transform standards from technical requirements into engaging investigations that promote deeper learning and critical thinking. Now, learning objectives translate unpacked standards into specific, measurable statements of what students would know and be able to do. Effective objectives are specific and measurable, clearly assigned to standard components, and appropriately challenging, focused on student learning rather than activities, and balance technical skills with conceptual understanding. So when creating objectives for standards, ensure you address all the unpacked components, knowledge, skills, and concepts. For example, a standard about analyzing network traffic might generate objectives about understanding protocols, using analysis tools, identifying anomalies, and communicating findings. Well-crafted objectives provide clear targets to both instruction and assessment. Now, learning activities should align directly and unpack standards and objectives. Effective standards-aligned activities have explicit connections to specific standard components, follow appropriate learning progressions, and balances direct instruction with active learning, and incorporate authentic context and provide opportunities for application and transfer. So when designing activities, make the standards connection explicit, both for yourself and for students. For example, an activity where students conduct vulnerability scans directly addresses the standard component about identifying vulnerabilities while building both technical skills and conceptual understanding. This explicit alignment ensures that activities serve learning purposes rather than becoming ends in themselves. So assessment planning flows directly from standards and objectives. When planning standards-aligned assessments, consider what specific evidence will demonstrate mastery of each standard component, how technical skills will be demonstrated, how conceptual understanding will be revealed, what balance of formative and summative assessment is needed, and how authentic the assessment context can be. For example, a standard about implementing security controls might be assessed through a performance task, where students secure a vulnerability system and justify the approach. This alignment ensures that assessments measure what matters most according to your standards, not just what's easy to test. Standards-based instruction must be differentiated to meet diverse student needs while maintaining alignment with the learning goals. For students with limited technical background, provide additional vocabulary, support, and more structured guidance. Focus on building conceptual understanding alongside basic skills, and use visual models to explain concepts. For students with advanced technical experience, offer extension challenges, encourage deeper exploration, provide leadership roles, and connect to advanced applications. The key is maintaining standard alignment while varying the support, complexity, or context, not lowering expectations or changing fundamental learning goals. So standards mapping in cybersecurity education presents several common challenges. Technical complexity can be addressed by breaking standards into smaller components and providing supporting resources like glossaries. The rapidly evolving nature of cybersecurity can be managed by focusing on enduring concepts while using current examples for context. Limited technical resources can be overcome through virtual labs, simulations, or greater emphasis on conceptual understanding. Varying student background can be addressed through flexible entry points, peer collaboration, and differentiated resources. The tension between breadth and depth can be resolved by prioritizing the most important standards and focusing on transferable concepts and skills. Standards mapping is more effective as a collaborative process. Collaboration brings diverse perspectives and expertise, distributes the workload of complex mapping, promotes consistency across courses and grade levels, supports professional growth through dialogue, and improves quality through feedback. Effective collaboration approaches include professional learning communities, focus on standards alignment, critical friends, protocol for constructive feedback, industry partner reviews for relevance checking, cross-disciplinary mapping teams to identify connections, and structured feedback process to ensure quality. Now, standards mapping is not an isolated activity, but integrates across all components of curriculum development. The standards you map in the first asynchronous activity will provide the foundation for subsequent work in Module C. Your map standards will guide the design of and determine appropriate assessment approaches in the third activity and create coherence across all curriculum components. Standards mapping is also an iterative process. As you develop labs and assessments, you may refine your understanding of the standards and their implications for instruction. This integration ensures that all curriculum components work together toward clear learning goals. Now let's prepare for the upcoming asynchronous activity on standards mapping. In this activity, you'll apply the concepts from this presentation to select appropriate cybersecurity standards, unpack them into their components, develop enduring understanding and essential questions, create learning objectives, design aligned activities, and engage in collaborative feedback. You have access to some standards and template to use, a curated standards collection, and example mapping to support your work. The activity is designed to be both practical and immediately applicable to your teaching context while building essential curriculum development skills.